Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Casual. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe, share, and like to this video. That really helps us in the algorithms, as well as consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. You can join with the links down below. We are keeping this session free for right now, but eventually it will be only for the premium content subscribers. So I'm glad you guys are taking advantage of it, but eventually it will be exclusive content only. Also, this episode is also brought to you in part by Arabic Grammar Unlocked. It is a book which will help you understand the Arabic grammar if you are having problems with it. It is based on a classical text called Al-Ajrumiyya. So make sure you take a look at that in the description down below. It is on Amazon, and you can check out the all of the the wonderful reviews. All right, with all that out of the way, let us bring in Shaykh Amir, who's been with us before. All of you know him from the Mad Mamluks. Welcome,
Assalamu
Shaykh
alaikum,
Amir.
everybody.
Salam.
Thank you for having me again, Maury.
Salam wa rahmatullahi
It's
wa
quite a
barakatuh.
pleasure.
Oh, well, we're quite welcome. We're quite glad to have you. A long time no see. All right. All right. We have a stalker already. That's normal for us. Okay. Anyways, so look, let me ask you something very quickly because as we're waiting for people to get in. What is your take on this whole, like some Muslims are out there saying they're getting really politically involved and they're saying, oh my God, Biden's going to be great for the Muslims or Trump was better for the Muslims. How should a Muslim approach this whole political election in terms of trusting a candidate?
Man, I think that's at least a five-part, it's a five-fold question. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. The first thing is we have to think of the mindset of the Muslims that say that. It's kind of self-centered for us to say that because us as an ummah, we're attached to the entire ummah. We're an extension, we're one body, right? And when we say Biden is going to be good for the Muslims and Trump's not going to be good for the Muslims, number one, which group of Muslims are we talking about? Are we only talking about ourselves and we're neglecting what's happening to all the other Muslims in the entire world because of the luxuries that we have? What are the other Muslims going to suffer? Because if we talk about what's happening internationally, they're both going to be equally as bad. There's no difference. There's not really going to be much of a difference. Rather, the Republicans will tell you to your face. This president will tell you to your face if he doesn't like you, which is why there may be more room to respect him for that reason. By no means don't like him, but at least I can respect that a little more if somebody. But if somebody is going to smile to me in my face, invite me to the White House for iftar, and then stab everybody else who says "La ilaha illallah" in their backs, overseas. That's a dilemma. Like I'll give you a small example. I had a non-Muslim acquaintance, and he's like, "Dude, why are you always talking about like Muslims, like other parts of the world? They're not American, dude. Like, why are you constantly like attaching yourself to them?" Right? He was a Republican, and he was a Trump supporter. He was very cool though, very respectful. So that concept is being embodied by Muslims also, where we're just thinking about ourselves over here, of what's going to benefit us over here. That's the first thing. There's another misconception of they're going to benefit us. Like, what are they going to do to benefit us? Just be a little more welcoming about being able to practice our religion openly. Yeah, I get that, but the trade-off is that you be generous to the Muslims and their rights, just like you're supposed to be generous to everybody else, including LGBTQ and everyone, all types of diversity. And there's a little edge of advantage you have, but the disadvantage is that everybody else in the world, has to face this foreign policy of the United States, right? And let's just be fair: the foreign policy of the United States is not only against Muslims, right? It's against anyone that any country that can be exploited and their resources can be utilized and allocated for for the luxuries that we have, basically, right? So on the face value, as a Muslim, it seems hypocritical. Somebody can say to you, then why do you live in the United States, right? If you're so against everything. Our claim as believers is the earth is Allah's earth, and whoever is in charge of a certain part of a land, we have to be patient with that, but we could still speak up. We could still speak up against it. Who said that I can't speak up against any type of injustice that's happening? That's actually my responsibility as a Muslim in this world, whether I'm in Egypt, whether I'm in Pakistan, whether I'm in the United States, right? I have to speak the truth, and I have to encourage good and I have to encourage what's good and forbid what's evil, no matter where I am. You know what I'm saying? So the whole coming back to the whole benefit thing. I mean, I think there's we could talk about this easily for 2 hours, just this topic. But I think that at the end, if we're really thinking of the big picture, they're both the exact same thing. If we're thinking about our immediate love for diversity, being able to not be hated by Trump supporters or the far extreme militant right, yeah, that probably may wither away a little bit, and we're just going to be more welcomed, But then that comes with another price, is that, hey, these guys that are not okay with LGBTQ, these people that are not okay with these other religions and are not okay with Buddhism and not okay with it, okay, you guys are extremists. That's going to be there too. So like people like you and I who have like just yesterday you were talking about feminism and the origins of feminism, the disdain of the origin of feminism. To this next administration, the people who are leading this administration, the followers of administration by the mass, dude, you by the way you explained that yesterday, and I don't have a problem with it. You don't have a problem with it, but you're an extremist to them now, right? To the Trump administration, the followers of Trump, you guys would have a common ground against feminism there, and maybe even what your contention is with the movement of the LGBTQ community. But with Biden and the Democrats and the far right and the extreme right, extreme left, I apologize. You're considered an extremist now, right? So who is it that's actually benefiting? Which type of Muslims are benefiting from all of this? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, but I think that no matter what you do, if you practice your religion, you're extremist to either side.
Anywhere, you're right. You're right.
So I would, but
Even in the
the
Muslim
thing is,
countries,
though,
dude.
yeah, but so I look at it this way, though. So while that may be true, though, but the reality is, though, who's more tolerant of quote extremists? Like, I mean, you'll find, I mean, like the leftists will say, yeah, that's culturally off, but they're still Americans, right? Whereas the right will say, no, you're not American at all. Like you don't belong here,
But to
right?
what
Like I mean,
it depends what your stance is. For the left to say, "Oh, well, they're still Americans," it
yeah, but
depends.
what I'm saying is the left won't be making calls to deport you, and they won't be making calls to like I mean, you know what I mean? Like yes, they will be. Oh my God, they might come off after you ideologically and say write essays and be like, oh, the backwardness of Islam or like the regressive nature of the patriarchy in Islam. Yeah, but I don't see them making policies that would be like, okay, we have to ban people from Somalia. We have to ban people from Yemen. We have to ban people from Iraq. I can't foresee them making comments like that. I can't foresee them saying that, you know what, we have to ban halal meat from a market. Like I just don't see that happening, right?
Yeah,
Whereas this is
that's definitely not going to happen.
yeah, so
Um,
this is the kind of rhetoric that I feel like that comes out of the right, though. Like, I mean, there's stuff where, like, you know what? Oh, ban hijab. Like, ban. I mean, like, it's not even just about things. They just want something that is completely devoid of any semblance of Islam. Like, I think the left, they don't. I mean, while they have staunch ideological differences, but they're more willing to allow someone who looks different to be there, and they're cool with agreeing to disagree. And for the most part, whereas I see like the right isn't like I mean they will flat out tell you that, oh, you know what, we don't want you here. Like like I mean it's just I feel like there's two different.
I
Yes,
think it comes back to that thing though, where by the face value, if they don't like you, they'll tell you, right? Um, And I think
I, I think the left will say it too. They will say, ideologically, we despise, the treatment of whatever or this whatever it is
yeah,
your treatment, but they're not. But I believe the right will be more likely to enable policies because they believe that this is something religious, whereas the left doesn't hold religion sacred to them.
yeah. No, I can definitely see that part. But I think once you permeate through the line, the initial layer, like I kind of see like layers. With the right, there's this layer, the initial layer that's not easy to permeate. You're just stopped at the first layer, at the top layer, front layer. With the left, I think after you get through a few layers, then that's where you're going to see some of that hatred. But again, you're right. I think the hatred is more in the form of deplatforming somebody, of canceling somebody, going somebody after their livelihood, and making sure they get fired. That's yeah, you're right. It's at that level. You don't really have to worry about armed militancy for the most part for the right, for the left. For the right, that's somewhat of a concern in areas.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's also a trade-off. I think the right, though, there's a greater possibility of us finding common grounds with them in terms of morality. Um, but again, that's a very tough barrier to break because they are not really open to hearing the other side. They're gung ho, evangelical. Everything else besides the Bible is Satanist. Like so, but if you can break the barrier, we have a lot more in common. But again,
But how
breaking that
much
barrier is the
percentage do
toughest
you
part.
think of Trump supporters are actually like that, and the right are actually? I think that there's a morphing that's occurring of the right because of Trump himself, where a lot of them didn't want to be associated with his rhetoric. They just wanted to see a shake up and a change up in government. They just wanted to see.
Well, sure, there's going to be people like that, but what I'm saying is the right wing core base is evangelical. I mean, sure, you're going to have a minority, but the core is like the Bible Belt, evangelical, prosperity Bible type stuff, right? So, breaking, getting to them, through to them, letting them acknowledge that, hey, you know what, another religion. See, they have a very big problem even acknowledging that another religion can exist. They hate that. They believe
I see
everything
what you're
else is
saying. Yeah,
it's a tool of Satan for them. It's a religious thing. It's a spiritual war for them. If you go
yeah.
listen to them, everything is about spiritual. Oh, like when they talk about Muslims and allowing them to come here, they'll say stuff like, "Oh, may we rebuke them in the name of Jesus." Like all these demons and spirits worshiping demons and gods, right? I mean, they make it very personal in terms of religion for them. So, but if you can break that barrier, right? And because they don't even believe that we have the same God, they believe that we just are completely out there and we're deceived by Satan. They literally worship. They believe that we worship Satan. I mean, that's pretty much what they do. So they don't want to. They don't agree with anything that. I mean, even though we have same moral concepts, we can't even get to that point right now because that barrier, just breaking that so hard. But I believe if you can break that barrier, sure, we'll have a lot more in common with them. But breaking that barrier with them is a big if,
Yeah, yeah.
especially like you know what I mean. Where the left, we don't have to break that barrier. They will criticize no matter what, but they'll just be like, okay, well they're different. They're culturally different than us. They have a long-term goal where they'll think, culturally these people will eventually assimilate, right? They tend to take a passive role on that. But again, I mean, I didn't want to divert too much into political stuff, but I have a quick question
But I
in
know I think that was
the
very very beneficial though. But if I can say one more thing, even
yeah.
though let's just and I do agree with you. My contention is that how significant, if we're one body as a believer, as believers, no matter how big the sea is between us, how much is it, or how significant is it to our belief and to our connection and our relationship to Allah that we're in such a dire situation that every little tiny amount of victory that we see, because some Muslims see this as a victory, it actually shows you how desperate Muslims are, for
Yeah, I
recognition
guess.
and
I
power.
mean, I mean, I mean, I don't know if it's a victory, but it's a sigh of relief. You know
It's a
what I
sigh of
mean?
relief,
That
but exactly. So to some people, that's what I mean. It's like a mini victory, like these little victories that eventually are supposed to lead
I
to.
mean, I think anybody would feel that way. I mean, if you have someone who's telling you, "Hey, you know what? You don't belong. We're going to ban you from the country," versus someone who says, "Hey, you're not banned from the country." No matter, I don't think it's a sign of weakness. It's just kind of like, "Oh, cool. Finally, I'm not being targeted." I mean, in that way, where you're not making policies that are banning my country from coming here or like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about your child hearing, having to explain to your child that the president of the country he lives in doesn't like Muslims, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that
Yeah.
psychological pressure is lifted from you,
Yeah.
right? Sure,
Yeah.
you're gonna have people, yeah.
No, so what I was saying is, in the grand scheme of everything that Muslims should be feeling and Muslims should be having, um, is that a self-centered thing that is this something that I think about all the time? Is it a self-centered thing that Muslims have, that little thing we're willing to completely invest all of our, put all of our eggs in that basket of, a Democrat being a president, and we're joyous over it. Like, I see a lot of Muslims that are joyous over it, and I think you're right. That action opened up something for me, is that it's just a sigh of relief. It is a sigh of
Yeah,
relief.
I mean, I mean, I think if
Yeah.
anyone has a complete trust in a candidate, I mean, they're obviously stupid for doing that. But there's no doubt in recognizing a benefit over one candidate over the other. Meaning that if you, it's apparent. I mean, I didn't vote in this election, but I clearly I would prefer Biden win over Trump. You know what I mean? Just because I know that the attitude and the rhetoric is not going to be the same as Trump.
It
You know
gives
what
you
I mean?
it gives you some breathing room for a while.
It actually, yeah, it just kind of returns back some normalcy, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's just what essentially what it is now. I'm not saying that Biden's going to stop for his foreign policy, and these are things that are going to happen. They're not. He's not a Muslim candidate, right? He's
Yeah.
not. He's not
Can't
running
have
on
those
issues that are
expectations of them. Yeah.
right. But I know that, I mean, right now it's natural human nature that you worry about your immediate circumstance before you worry about outside first, right? But so it's essentially what I'm saying is it's hard to worry about Yemen when you're worried about what's happening you're in front of you right now, in front of you here, right? I mean, what your children are about to go up into, right? So
Yeah.
it's different. You're naturally not going to think about that, right? I mean, it's just human nature, right? I mean, like if you're going to ask a person in Kashmir to think about what's happening in Palestine, it's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, maybe he might, but to the degree it's going to be more of it's going to be more of his own interest because it's presented to him first.
Yeah.
That's my point. That I believe that the left may obviously is harmful for the akhirah, but I do believe that if Muslims can recognize that and take that as a serious threat, they can still utilize the fact that the left is much more lenient to them than the right is. And as long as they don't fall trap to what the left is doing, the left generally them being in power, tends to be a little bit easier on the Muslims in terms of scrutiny, these called anti-terrorism laws, all these kind of things. Like, just the harassment becomes less, I believe.
More. I have
I
I
mean,
have one last question for you on this topic. I apologize. I don't know if you can just solve this for me, like, in a minute or two. I've been trying to research on, like, drone attacks, and people always talk about drone attacks. Is one thing that we have to ask ourselves is, what is the motive behind the United States foreign policy of, excessive drone attacks, especially during Obama's reign, and Trump's reign, which was up. There were so many more drone attacks. Um, is it safe to say one of the main motives, and I don't know, because I've been reading so many conflicting things, I was like, I got to ask my guys Sim and Mark. Is the main reason for this because to give the Americans an incentive and to show them we're getting our troops out, to let them know that we don't need to depend on troops actually being there, drones, because of the drone strikes? Is that's not the reason?
no,
That has
they're
nothing
doing
to do with
it. No, I mean they maintain strategic interests. It's in the interest of America to be there, and they're replacing physical bodies with drone warfare.
Yeah.
So and you're able to do more and quickly without a declaration of war, and you're able to do things quicker without risking American lives for them. But they do it also in terms for their allies, for whether it be in Saudi interest. But again, they're quote unquote allies. They're only allies. There's no loyalty. It's only based on mutual interest. So when they're doing it for their allies, they're doing it for themselves. So this is why they would be involved in Syria, Pakistan, Yemen,
To protect their own interests
Afghanistan.
that are in that land that they're
Of
going to be
course,
benefiting from.
of
Yeah.
course. It has
It's not like
nothing to
a
do
friendship.
with
It's not a real friendship.
yeah. No, there's no friend. There are no friends in politics. Zero friends in politics. No one is an ally. So let's just kind of go on to some of the other questions we got here real quick. Hold on. Let me just. Sorry. We we've got a lot of comments, so I just need to get through some of it. Let me see here. Maliki, look at the thing is more these type of Christians fanatic this on the left too. Trust me, it's coming from. Yes, true. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. But it's I believe that it's more it's not as acceptable to be that way among the left. They would call them bigoted. They would say that now that kind of Christian is under the umbrella that Jesus loves everybody. You know, the kind of Catholic thing where the Pope is now embracing homosexuality and stuff like this. Let me see. Someone asked a question. I just got lost here somewhere about. Sorry. Someone asked a question about the Shia. I think it was about if you can eat meat from them. I don't know if you want to answer that or not. Let me see if I can find it. Because if they curse the Sahaba or whatever, I think something about eating. Yeah, here we go. Is it allowed to eat meat from the Shia people if they are practicing Shia who hold bad views of Sahaba?
Wow, that's an interesting question, man. Wallahu alam, man. I don't know, because I don't know, man. My gut feeling is to say that if they're denying the Sahaba, especially Abu Bakr, is to say no. But I don't remember reading anything in the books of fiqh specifically about.
So let me pick your brain on this. Is it kufr bawa to say that Abu Bakr shouldn't have been the Khalif? And I think that's the crux of the matter. Even if they wanted to, okay, to become a Muslim, they have you have your 5 pillars, right? Now, of course, there are statements of kufr that obviously insult the companions, but does that take one out of the fold of Islam, or does that make him a fasiq? Right? So I think it's kind of, because again, they're brought up in this, right? So is it something they actually convinced of, right? So I think for the layman, it's different than someone that's a scholar, Allahu alam. But I mean, like, it's a tough question.
Yeah. So as far as denying saying that he shouldn't have been a Khalifa, look, again, there's layers to this too.
I'm saying, let's say they play Salatul La'na. I mean, let's just forget that. I mean, if he were to play Salatul La'na, that's kufr in itself.
That's different. Right? I mean, but yeah, one thing is that, okay, he should have been Khalifa. Okay, I get it. That's still wrong to say that. Very wrong. It's haram to say that. But is that actually an act of kufr, especially taking the circumstance, does take somebody out of the fold of Islam? That's one thing. But to curse Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, when Rasulullah said that he's from amongst these people and his virtues, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions him, and Muhammad says to him that Abu Bakr, Jibreel alayhi salam is telling me that Allah is happy, subhanAllah. Allah is happy with you. Are you happy with Allah? I mean, there's overwhelming amount. So to say and to curse him and say that he's not a Sahabi, that's something else, because then you're denying verses from the Quran, you're denying what Rasulullah said, right? Of authentic hadith, right? Which accumulate to be lots of hadith. But the other thing is that if you agree that he's a Sahabi, and you're not cursing him, and you say that, and you see the difference now, right? That
but let me give you another twist. Wrong. Let me give you another twist, though. There are non-Muslims from Ahl al-Kitab that we eat from.
I know.
So it's tricky. We'll let the Shaykh research a little bit.
No, that's why I said my gut feeling is telling me, but I've never, subhanAllah, read a masala, anything in the books of hadith or fiqh about eating meat from the people of the Shia. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So that's why I'm not going to answer that. Wallahu alam.
Okay. All right. We'll see if you can get some more information. Let me see. We got another comment, a super chat. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair. Az. Ireland's best embodies the Islamic values of Islam, opportunity, and justice, according to Muslim survey, a non-Muslim country. Interesting. We'll have to go check and see what Ireland. But I've heard that Ireland can also have a very hard pushback against Muslims too. I've heard, like the traditional Irish Catholics. Allahu alam, but we'll have to take a look at that.
But that's what comes back to more. Like, look, no matter where you go, if you're really, really trying to practice Islam, you're going to have some tension with people, right? Especially people of power, especially people who run certain types of organizations and initiatives that completely go against the teachings of Islam. But as Muslims, we're not really afraid to be in those situations, because we know that Islam also told us what the rules of engagement are too, right? Mm-hmm. It's up to us to become creative in how we thrive in any society, any given society. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, I get that's true, but I think that the issue is that, I mean, what's the measure that they're saying is Islamic and fair? I mean,
Justice. Who's
yeah, I mean,
understanding of justice?
yeah, like what's the litmus test? I mean, everyone has their own definition of what is an Islamic country, right? So I always tend to see, well, oh, this is the most friendly Muslim non-Islamic country, right? Well, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? To me, it's kind of like, eh. But I mean, I've heard even New Zealand. I've heard other places. I mean, it's all
Everyone's friendly,
subjective.
bro. Everyone's friendly until you encourage the good and forbid the evil, bro. Everyone's
Yeah,
nice up
yeah.
until then. Everyone's beautiful with you, bro. You just don't get involved in
If you
anything. Yeah.
if you go with the flow. Does the United States conduct drone strikes against the drug cartels in Mexico? Not that I know of, but they do run operations. But one of the reasons why America would not run drone strikes on Mexico is because number one, it's too close to the borders. I mean, you're not going to be. Imagine if Americans saw like drones running across over the country. Um, not a good look for Americans to have something so close to home. Put it that way. When you're thousands of miles away from home, Americans don't see the activity. It's different when you see activity in front of your face that causes backlash because there's carnage.
Mm.
I mean, and it's also in your face. Many Americans go in and out of Mexico as well too, back and forth, right? You can see. It's just the last thing they want to do is put stuff in your face because media gets a hold of that, and it's never a good thing. Um, so much fitna. I hope not. Okay, we got that question. What surah or du'as do you recommend to strengthen your memorization, just for Quran in general?
Yeah, man. I mean, so I think the beautiful thing is we talk about this book. I think almost in every episode when we're talking about Hisn Muslim, right? Um, so there is a section in the book that is basically for what we refer to in English. We heard the expression mind, body, and soul, right? Just for general well-being. But what embodies all of that is, this advice was given to me by one of my dear friends, even when I was in Egypt, for memorization, also to do lots of memorization. And he gave me some awesome advice, man. And this may be a little tedious for some people, um, but it helped me a lot. Is that you wake up in the morning, you pray your Salat al-Fajr, and you do your adhkar of the morning, right? The adhkar of the morning, and you'll find that also in the Hisn Muslim, Fortress of the Muslim, and you'll see that section. It's right, before the or after that. I think is a chapter of istikhara, or right before it. Right after that is the dua of istikhara, but it basically goes through all the duas that you should read in the morning. Muhammad used to read in the morning. One thing that I realized is after I started reading that, and I was talking to one of my teachers about that, and he told me that that's what him and his teachers always told him also, right? That is kind of like a general culture that if you really, really want to work on your memorization, because you have to remember, a lot of these people who were reviewing their memorization were not just reviewing the Quran in their memorization, right? They were reviewing a hadith, they were reviewing books of fiqh, they were reviewing, all these other books that they actually have memorized, right? So then you read the adhkar of the morning and the evening. Preferably try your best to, after you do that, take a little bit of a break, but stay where you are and read Salat al-Duha. And before Salat al-Duha, after Salat al-Duha, just memorize if that's your timing for memorization. Another thing for memorization is something very, very simple. It's just, literally just choose the best time for yourself, which is usually after Maghrib and after Fajr for memorization. And just, you know, ask Allah to increase my memorization. Ya Allah, I've dedicated these times just for memorization, even if it's a half an hour, and just spend that time after memorization, after Salat al-Maghrib. One benefit that I saw, the best time for memorizing anything is after Salat al-Maghrib and after Salat al-Fajr. And if you just want a little bit of a litany of how to go about that, is anything you're going to do new, read it after Maghrib, and then do the revision of it after Fajr, and then try to do a little new. Or you can just play around with it and do it. Let's say that you want to memorize page number 400, right? You're on page 400 in the Quran. You want to memorize one page, work on that one page after Salat al-Fajr, and then it's to the best of your ability, whatever you're going to do is test yourself. And then after Maghrib, work on that same portion, review it, and see if you have a little more room to memorize more. right? And it's not a rush either. A lot of times, even if you memorize 3 lines a day, man, that's more than enough. Memorize the Quran in 8 years. I can't hear you, Morty.
Sorry, I was on mute. Question, Shaykh Amir, why is sex so taboo in Islam when it is what we do to make children and make love? Why do we not talk about it that much? Well, I mean, go ahead, Sheikh.
Yeah, so number one, I personally don't think it's taboo, and it depends what circles you're in, and it depends who you're discussing with, right? I think culturally, sex is not very much talked about, especially Eastern Muslim cultures, where we shied very, very much away from it. I never heard that word from my mother and father at all. I actually learned like, in school and then eventually with teachers, and then you open the books of fiqh, then all your shame is gone. That's what is usually said. You open the books of fiqh and everything's gone. I'm teaching fiqh of tahara to 9th graders. In the beginning, you can see that they're all really, really shy. But then when you just get into the mix of fiqh, because tahara is where you learn everything you need to about health, and sex and everything like that. But in Islam, just to correct what you're saying, in Islam, there is no shyness of discussing matters to know what is right and wrong as far as sex is concerned. What is not allowed is you become lewd and you openly talk about things and make people feel uncomfortable. For instance, anything that you learn, like, what constitutes, let's talk about this. Like, I'll give you a small example. More, do you want an example?
Go ahead. I mean,
After
it's up to you.
what
You're the
requires a
teacher
ghusl,
here.
right? What requires a ghusl? You have to discuss this because, especially when people get married, a lot of people don't know the ahkam of ghusl. Clearly, the books of fiqh. I mean, I could show you. I have them in Arabic here, but if I could, I would be able to show the English to you. Is if somebody's like, okay, if I'm naked with my wife and my penis just touches her vagina, does my wudu break or do I have to take ghusl? No, if it just touches, then you just have to do wudu, right? It just touches it. But if the head of the penis disappears inside of the vagina, then you have to ghusl, whether you ejaculate or you don't ejaculate, right? Now, Islam is in fiqh is very clear. It has to be. There can't be any ambiguity in fiqh. Because if you're ambiguous, basically don't speak basically, if you're being ambiguous, let's say I say to Mort's like, hey, what's going to require me ghusl? What if I just say to him, if you do that, and I like nudge at him, he's actually not going to know because that wasn't clear. I was like, if you do the deed, like, what does that actually mean? Because I'm not clear. I'm being ambiguous. In the Sharia, you're actually not supposed to be ambiguous. You're actually supposed to be very detailed. And if I can conclude with saying this more, check this out. Look at what Rasulullah, when the man came to Rasulullah, he says, Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to do zina. He can't take it anymore. But there's one thing you have to understand before we even talk about the hadith. Number one, how approachable is Rasulullah that he can go and just say, he didn't say, give me permission to get me married like right away or mut'a marriage. He didn't say that. He said, just let me have sex, like haram sex, fornication, right?
Yeah.
Like the pressure, you could tell the Sahabi the pressure was on.
He
But
was on fire.
then the Rasulullah, what did he say? First thing he says is what? Come close. That's something beautiful. What can we derive from him? Number one, not having a bad reaction, and he's saying, come close. There's a lot of hikmah, a lot of scholars talk about just that concept of
Yeah,
him coming close.
don't open yourself up to the public and let everybody know. Just kind of
Allahu
talk to me
Akbar.
privately about it.
Allahu
Yeah.
Akbar. You could talk about it in close quarters because you need to know what's right and wrong. But you don't want to give off signs of being lewd in Islam because that doesn't befit the majesty of the believer. It doesn't befit the nobility of the believer to adorn himself with that kind of speech and that kind of language, right? But rather, if you want to know, you can ask anything you want, right?
Yeah.
And then Rasulullah, he tells him, would you like it for your mother? If somebody would ask the same question for your mother, he didn't reprimand him either. He made him think. So what tells us is that if you make somebody think hard enough, it'll override the feelings that they have or inclinations for haram. And it'll actually make them despise the act instead of reprimanding them in a harsh manner, right? And of course, there were situations Muhammad had to reprimand harshly too. Those are their own situations. But that being said, in Islam, sex is not taboo. What is considered lack of haya, Islam is what you're referring to now, is to the next point, is one of the branches of Iman. And you'll find this hadith in the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi. One of the branches of Iman is haya, is bashfulness. Not just being shy, but bashful, right? Rasulullah, like a lot of people don't know this about him. Like, let's get to know Rasulullah for like a minute, right? Aisha radiallahu anha said about him that he was obviously a men's man, right? But he was still very shy of women, right? Just because he had many wives, it doesn't mean that he wasn't shy of women. And the hadith says that he was like a girl that would hide. Some of the narrations say that he was like a virgin girl in her shyness. This is Aisha radiallahu anha saying this about Muhammad, meaning that he was very shy of being around women. But because he was a prophet, he had to be upfront and he had to, obviously, and he was very confident. But there's nothing wrong with being shy. Contemporary thought and practices will tell you if you're shy in front of women, that there's something wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with you.
Wait, not just to be very clear. When you say shy, there's a different term of use in the Arabic language. It's not the same shy you would think that someone's like a schoolgirl shy. I mean, like meaning that you're not timid. Like I mean, it's what we're saying is that he's shy in the sense that he respects himself and he respects others around him, and he doesn't want to cross those limits because he knows that there's certain things that are suitable for between genders, right? So if Rasulullah had to say something to a woman or a man, or whatever, he would say it very clearly and very openly. And there's no doubt about that. But I think when you use the shyness in the English language, it gets kind of tainted. Where
no, but I'm going to make a bold statement and say that in his nature of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on a human level, he was actually shy of women. But obviously, of being the prophet, he had to be up forward and straight. But as far as that's what Aisha radiallahu anha, she says what? It was like he was a virgin girl. Like the virgin girl is shy of men, right? Like there's this type of innate shyness. It's a type of purity. It's not a weakness. Not now the shyness you're talking about, which has elements of weakness to it. It wasn't weakness. It was actually a very powerful strength of Rasulullah. And it tells you how much dealings he had to do, even with that shyness. People would never actually, when it's time to speak the truth, when it's time to talk to people about the deen, you would never sense that from him.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. It's about gender relations, meaning that, you know, it's awkward when you don't, like, you feel awkward around women, right? Like, I mean, meaning that you don't, it's not normal for you just to be hanging out with women and to be talking, flirting with them, or to be, you know, to be staring at them. This was not his nature to do that. It was like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, and so when we say shy, it's just like, I feel like the English gets lost.
I know what you mean. There's an element to it.
Yeah, the relationship between, like, he wasn't free and comfortable being around women, meaning that, you know, he was strange to him. Like, he couldn't be himself. You know, like when you...
And there's nothing wrong with if you have those feelings.
No, this is the way Allah is... I mean, this is a fitrah to be this way. I mean, if you really think about it, you're supposed to be, you know, a little bit reserved in front of the opposite gender. You're supposed to be... That's how you maintain a healthy boundary. Otherwise, what is the difference between the woman you're talking to in the street and your wife? What's the difference between them?
There's no difference,
There's no difference, right? So, I mean, so the idea is that was the kind of shyness that he had, that you know what, that a woman felt like that she never felt uncomfortable around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was going to prey on her, or he was taking advantage of her, or that he, you know, that there was some ill intent in there, right? He was that respective that they would feel, I mean, anyone would feel comfortable, even if someone, if their wife had to ask him a question or something like this, it would never be a thought that crossed their mind that, oh my God, he has an evil intent. He has about a woman, right? And that's kind of, and it had to be there for him to be a Nabi. It had to be there because they had to trust that. It goes in line with his character, right? That he is truthful, he's honest, he's respectable. And you have to be, if you want to be a respectable person, you have to have that kind of character. Otherwise, you know, if you feel like you could essentially, you know, cheat on anyone's wife or whatever it is, or look at them disrespectfully, who would trust you, right?
You're
I
right.
mean, that's one of the most important things of honor for a man, right? That the women of his family are safe, right? And if you are a messenger and the women of a man's family are not safe with you, then you know, who would be safe with you, right? It doesn't make any sense. Right, so that's why I like to say when we say shy, because you know some of the kuffar will hear them say, "Oh, how you shy like a girl?" You know what I mean? They don't understand what we're talking about. Their culture has been so tainted by this. You know, like they're taught to show off their women. They're taught to talk. Like if you don't talk about this stuff, you're gay. Like if you don't talk about the body parts of women in public and gawk at women and whistle at them and do a cat call, you're a gay person, right?
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was when we were growing up more. Now it's
yeah,
it's a whole different connotation. But just
yeah.
let
I
me
mean,
clarify one hadith. I know
yeah.
I said that a few times, but it's worth mentioning. I think Ozzy, thank you very much for asking this question. Very much necessary to discuss this. Look at Rasulullah. He said when one of you approaches your wives, when he's saying approaches your wives, he means when you have marital relations with them, i.e., sexual intercourse, you're going to get ajr for it, right? It's an act of ibadah. And the Sahaba were confused. They were like, Ya Rasulullah, how are we going to, these other acts of worship we understand, but sexual intercourse with our wives? And Rasulullah says, look, Allah Akbar, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He says, the simpleness, the simplicity. If you were to have zina, wouldn't it be haram on you? He said, yes. So then wouldn't it be that if you did it within a contract of marriage sanctioned by Allah that you would get ajr for it? Right? So it's a beautiful thing. I think to have these conversations. In Islam, sex is not taboo. We may make it taboo, but then again, we shouldn't be openly discussing. Like I have to tell that to the high schoolers, right? Once you discuss it as class, don't go in the hallway start talking about there's women there, there's teachers that are females, there's other girls that are there, and it's not the place to talk about it. You're going to make somebody feel very uncomfortable.
You know what? I just want to point this out. There's a reason for this, and it's human nature. When you talk, some people will use this type of language to talk about stuff like this in front of other people, same gender or no gender, a different gender, to encourage these thoughts
Yeah.
and to try to feel out the response they get from them.
Shayateen
Right?
min
So,
al-ins.
of course. This is what happens. This is how they flirt. They put these ideas and they try to move forward. So, in prevention of the fawahish coming into society, you don't talk about this stuff openly, right? If you're in closer with your friends, with your man, I mean, this is a complete different type of language, right? Versus what you're displaying out in the public. But look, real quickly, Aslam, it's a good question, but I feel like we don't have enough time to do this. Email me this question and we'll cover it the next time. It's important. The answer is important. I think it's a great topic, but we just don't have time. We already went about 10 minutes over. I think we have time for one more quick question. And we're going to wrap this one, a quick question, and we will wrap this one up. Question for Shaykh Amir. How are we supposed to address fake people on Muslim Twitter? I guess that is a zindiq and spreading falsehood and leading people astray.
Yeah, man. I think that there's always going to be, I'm not saying I don't even think there's one correct answer for this. And I'll tell you what I mean by that within a minute, inshallah. I think there's always going to be people that are refuting a group of people that are causing some type of falsehood and leading people astray or intending to lead people astray. That group is always going to be there, alhamdulillah, for them. And that group has to be there all the time. My attitude usually toward it is, because I'm not really on Twitter, it has its own culture. My idea is that, whatever is supposed to happen is from Allah. And if it's a person in front of me or family or the institutions that I'm physically in, I'll address it. But if it's on Twitter, I just let it wither away. People on Twitter just want to be heard, and if you ignore them, you ignore them. But then the flip side to that is if they're getting lots and lots of influence, and I don't think there's that many people, and those people who are getting that influence are already being rebutted, and that's going to happen up until Yom Al Qiyamah. Us as believers, we embrace, whether it's on Muslim Twitter, wherever it is, we embrace this challenge of people spreading falsehood. And all we have to do, we're not the bringer of outcomes and changer of outcomes. We just encourage the good and forbid the evil. The end result is up to Allah, how far it's going to spread. That all happens with permission of Allah. We have to understand, in closing, that Allah, at the end, it's all His decision. That's what we mean by Allah has control over everything. That He will test us and He'll let it be. He is the creator and He is the solver of the outcomes. We are the people of just literally rolling with the punches and doing Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al Munkar. The rest is up to Allah, man.
Yeah, and I would say, to be honest, on Twitter, I wouldn't waste my time. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, the more you give people attention, the more they want it, they crave it. They put things out to get attention. I mean, there have been many times where nobody would know what they're tweeting. People have like 2 followers, and people start retweeting. You see what this stupid person said, and you just bring them attention. Why we? I mean, honestly, I don't think every single comment is deserving of a response. Right? If you wanted to respond to every single dumb comment on Twitter, you would never be able to put your phone down. Right? So why would you? I mean, that's how I personally feel about it. I honestly, when I tweet, I just leave a tweet out, and maybe I might. I mean, I don't check it for like days. I mean, I'm like, oh, I mean, a couple out. I mean, the same tweet, or maybe if I get a notification, I'll check it. But other than that, like, there's no really point of engaging that. You know, in my honest opinion, I feel like just put what you have to put out there, and if you see something that is wrong, you can comment on it generally in your own Twitter feed, and then and address it generally without giving that person attention. Because then that's what they want. They want you to talk about them. They want you to make them relevant. Twitter is about clout. It's about being famous, about being retweeted. It's about being recognized, right? So why give them that recognition? When you recognize an opponent, that means they've won the first battle. You're actually legitimizing them, right? So if you really want to shut down an opposition, just don't even legitimize them. Because 99% of the times out there, the argument they're making has already been refuted in the past by ulama in the past. Mm. So, I mean, really, it's only to kick up dirt again that's already settled, right? It's already been done. So my advice is, it's just, unless you're really involved in polemics and that's your forte, that's what you're doing, I wouldn't waste time. I mean, I really wouldn't. There's so much more beneficial stuff to talk about and to put out. You know what I mean? Than that.
Nobody's going to extend the note of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody's going to be able to, no matter what they try. I know we could become very protective, but we have to also realize we do what we do. We have to try our best, and we can't get alarmed by these people. These people are always going to exist. They exist at the time of Rasulullah, man. They're never going to go away. They're always going to be here. So don't let it alarm you. Embrace it, and then just roll with the punches, inshallah. And let those people who are responsible and specialized in debate and in refuting and in apologetic, let them deal with that, because that's what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of reminds me of that time of the character Ibn Sayyad. I mean, what a deviant, what an evil person. Even during the time of Rasulullah, he was there. He was around, and the Rasulullah wasn't really sure what he was, but he was kind of like that troll, that kind of, you know what I mean, like that making half-hearted comments, like I could be, I may not be, I may know him. I mean, in reference to Dajjal, right? Like he was doing that, where he tried to taunt the messenger, like, oh, I knew him, I may not know him, I could be him. I mean, just these kinds of things. Like he would purposely mumble things under blankets and deceive people. So you're always gonna have people like this, right? They're always gonna be around who try to cast doubts and just cause problems. So, like Shaykh Amir said, it's better to just leave it to people who've already, it's their forte. Just leave it for them. With that being said, I'm gonna give Shaykh Amir any few things any things that you want to close with.
Yeah, what I'm closing with is this. Morty, Jazakallah khair for sending me this. I know you didn't ask me to do this. I might embarrass you right now, but one thing I realized is not only is this dude's dope beard dope, it actually looks like your beard. Did you intentionally do this?
Yeah, the designer designed it off my face, actually. Yes, my eyebrows and my beard.
Yes,
yeah. Yes, salam.
Yeah, dude. So I was like, I'm rocking this, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of embraced the stares. The only dilemma was that I went on a walk with my family on election day, and I was wearing bright red, and from far away, people thought this was letters saying MAGA, and then when they came close, they're like, "Oh, is this Muzzy?" You thought it said MAGA over here, but it actually was Muzzy. So thank you for almost getting me lynched in front of my family.
No problem. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Always here to support you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. If you want the merchandise, it is down in the description down below. I forgot to mention that earlier in the show. The links are down in the description down below. Make sure you check them out if you like the merchandise. That is it for this episode of Keeping It Casual with Shaykh Amir. So Again, we did go a little over, but if you want to get your questions answered, please email me them before next week's show, muzzlybuzzshow@gmail.com. So if anyone who asked a question this session and did not have a chance to get their questions answered, please be sure to get them to me before the next show, inshallah. So thank everybody for joining in. We appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And we will catch you later, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.